What's up and welcome back to the channel. You're listening to Ninja Knight. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell up above for future uploads. Check out the links posted in the description down below to support the channel. Consider joining the channel today and make sure you're following me over here on Odyssey. It's available on web browser, iOS and soon to be available on Android. Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today is a spoiler review, so there's going to be spoilers in this video just to let you know, and also my thoughts on this series as a whole for this Masters of the Universe revelation. Now, it's probably pretty clever of them not to name it He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, given the fact that He-Man barely features within this series. You will have a couple of SJW clowns that will be out there that will say, well, he was talked about and or he was in flashbacks in each episode. That is beside the point, you absolute moron. This is supposed to be about He-Man and it is supposed to be He-Man's TV series. Given the fact that he is on all of the promotional material along with Skeletor, you have to understand that this is a series about this character. That's just plain and simple. This is like if you decided to make a Barbie TV series and just decide to make it all about Ken. It wouldn't make sense. So we have He-Man and Skeletor, two characters that we have come to know as being basically the faces of this brand. And what they do with these guys is unbelievable. So the first episode starts off and we see that Teela, who's a character that we will get to know throughout this video, very poorly done within this series, is being celebrated because she's taken up the mantle of Man-at-Arms. So this series starts off with a red flag because she's already taking the name of another popular character that we all know and beloved. Duncan, aka Man-at-Arms, is a character that we know for a very long time, and basically his name is being given to Teela. This has a very much so Rey Skywalker sort of esque treatment to it there already. We then see Spikor, what looks to be Spikor, and then we have also we've got Clawful that are being brought by He-Man towards Castle Grayskull, and the sorceress comes out. It is revealed then that it is actually Skeletor and Evelyn that are posing as Clawful and as Spikor, which is pretty disappointing because the designs look pretty cool and I would have liked to hear what they sounded like, but alas, we don't get that. What happens, this celebration is disrupted and He-Man is called upon by the sorceress. At this point then, Adam leaves and he tells everybody, look, you have to get away, you have to move. And then we get to see then his mother seems to know that he is also He-Man, which is pretty peculiar within itself. Moving on then, the characters go out then an all-out battle. As you can see here, we have Clamchamp over here. And then we have Andra, a character that has been race swapped within this series. She was a white character with red hair. She is now black because apparently there are now black characters within Eternia. We also have Sir Laserlord also they could have used within this series. We'll talk about that now soon. So they go towards the Castle Grayskull to help out the sorceress. We have Alan Oppenheimer, who was voicing Mossman in this series, the original voice of Skeletor. He basically comes out of the ground and is zapped by Skeletor. The sorceress is pretty much beaten down and Skeletor is getting in his way. Prince Adam He-Man comes along after transforming himself and Cringer into Battle Cat. Brilliant scene, and this is where it's really disappointing when you look at this series. These opening kind of 10-15 minutes, put aside the Teela stuff for the moment, but those 10 or 15 minutes that feature He-Man and Skeletor are really good. And it shows what this series could have been, which is even more disappointing than as a result. So Mossman is eviscerated in front of He-Man. He-Man gets really angry. And then, like any sort of movie or TV series we've seen before, because we see that there's a little key slot, he stabs at Skeletor and stabs Skeletor so much so that it goes through him and into the key slot, which opens up basically a Pandora's box. So the sorceress then tells us that after Skeletor cracks the orb, that this is going to contain all the magic in Eternia and the explosion is going to threaten all of reality. So it gives He-Man a choice. He-Man then says, well, if he sacrifices himself and takes the power upon the power sword, can that help? The sorceress says it's dangerous, he doesn't know what will happen, but it might be worth a shot. So He-Man does that then, he calls on the power of Grayskull, gets himself and Skeletor zapped, boom, they're gone. So that's the two characters, the two prominent characters that are known for this series, gone in the first episode. Incredible. Then what you get to see then is basically me being proved right. as my He-Man theory was on point in the previous video that I did. I told people at the time, don't go out at half time. I've seen the synopsis, I've seen what's going to happen here, I've seen the way they've promoted it. We know this is going to be the Teela show. And as a result, then we get this sort of exchange then from Teela. She goes from a fairly likeable character, poorly voice acted though, but we'll get to the voice acting later, to one that is completely and utterly unlikable by the end of the episode. King Randor and the Queen learn of He-Man and Prince Adam's death. Teela's much more upset about the fact that their son died, but it's her feelings that were hurt. This is a trend that goes on then into the later episodes of the series, as I'll talk about now in a moment, and just makes her an unlikable character. And I mean, I don't know why they decide to write these characters the same all the time. These screeching, unlikable female characters. It just seems to be consistent with the way they're writing things now in Hollywood, which is pretty much disappointing, because this character deserved better really than what she got. She decides then to leave, doesn't care about anything that's happening. Man-at-Arms is banished then by King Randor, told if he comes back he'll be executed, and that's how it really is then. So she feels sorry for herself throughout this whole series because He-Man and Prince Adam didn't tell her their secret. Mad stuff. So what happens then is Teela in the next episode opens up then with the SJW haircut, this side haircut shaved on the side with our buddy Andra, a cardboard cutout character, a character that they've race swapped within this series from white woman with red hair to a black woman. They could have used another prominent black character that existed that they pretended don't exist within Eternia. Clam Champs or Laserlot probably would have been my choice. Or Laserlot is a very good character created by Jeff Johns. Of course, that's who Ray Fisher is saying is an ist. Incredible. But that's a character that you could have used that looks good, has a good, decent enough power set, and would have sold a lot of toys. And this is what Mattel is in the game for. They're in there to sell toys. None of these characters here come off looking well. Roboto probably a little bit more better than the others, and that's saying a lot because Roboto has the ability to have interchangeable parts and stuff. Evelyn, decent enough character. The way she joins in is incredible, but we'll get into that now in a moment. So episode 2 cracks on then, and they are fighting. Both Teela and Andra are fighting against Stinkor, who was voiced by Jason Mewes. I think he has one line. That's about it, which is disappointing. And they retrieve a glove, so I think it might be a bit of a nod to the Infinity Gauntlet. They're basically collecting magical objects because magic is evaporating because of what's happened. What is happening next then is it's obviously Evelyn that's in disguise that comes to them as an old lady. It's very reminiscent, I suppose, of Snow White, the way they've done it. You know, Kevin Smith isn't the type of guy to think outside the box, I suppose, which isn't surprising. But we have this old woman that comes to them and asks them to go to Snake Mountain to retrieve an old goblet. At the moment, Triclops is now in charge, and he's after establishing a cult, and it worships technology. Very strange stuff in itself, because it's not something that we would have seen an awful lot of beforehand. We get a little flashback, and this is where they talk about He-Man being in each episode. There's a flashback between, as they get into the gate there, that there's a fight between Whiplash, has no lines either, doesn't say anything. There's a lot of characters that were in this series that look good but don't say anything. Very, very strange. Not even a murmur from the character, really, and no character in it whatsoever. And he gets whooped then by He-Man and Teela. He has now these new magical, I suppose, metal mechanical powers. It's given by this motherboard thing, so rather than the magic, or either magic is, it's really poorly displayed within this series as to what's going on, how they're utilising this machine stuff. Is it magic? Is it not magic? Is it a part of magic? We don't know. Evelyn then relieves herself and lets us know that she is the old woman in disguise, and it's really clear because Lena Headey, even the voice that she uses, it doesn't differ whatsoever really from the Evelyn character. I mean, it goes to show that these two characters are absolute numpties, two idiots, that they couldn't listen to the character and say, I think that might be Evelyn. You've only fought against her for how long? You've heard her voice, and yet then you couldn't decipher that it was her. So it goes to show how much of an idiot that Teela is really within this series. So what happens is then the goblet is revealed then to be the head of Skeletor's Havoc staff, which has some of the last embers of magic. The sorceress transfers the remainder of Eternia's magic into Evelyn's staff, becoming greatly weakened in the process. Teela is then tasked by the sorceress to retrieve the two halves of the Sword of Power. So the Sword of Power has been split in two, and she needs to go and get one. One is based in basically the hell of Eternia, and another one is based in the heaven of Eternia. So you would think that's going to be a very difficult task to get to both ones. Not at all. Really interesting how they get there fairly quickly. So they have to go down to the land of the dead, and Teela goes down to collect more people to help her out. She decides to help out with Man at Arms and give him a bit of a hand against the tech empire that's coming with Triclops. They fight against them. They're fended off then by Man at Arms and Beastman. Man at Arms has a decent display of what he can do within this series, yet then just decides at points in time that it's not for him and walks away. It's very, very strange. Just decides to just abdicate his role completely, and it's shown within this episode that he's actually helping out Orko. So Orko is just lying in the bed. He's telling a couple of jokes. He's saying he's going to pass away and stuff. And, you know, the writing's on the wall. Kevin Smith spoiled this before the episode came out, really, anyway. So it's not really that much of a shock. So what they do then is Roboto says to Man at Arms, look, I'm a younger, better version of you. Okay, so this is Roboto telling Man at Arms you're useless also. And says to him, I'll go with him and I'll reforge the power sword. You needn't do anything. You might as well stay here. Madness. So on the way to Subeternia, we see then there's another kind of flashback then between He-Man and Teela, and they're fighting against Merman, Evelyn and Skeletor. They're thrown into the water, they get out, they survive, and He-Man cracks a joke. Merman then pops up again. Now he has a scar over his right eye, so that's both him and Whiplash that have scarring to their eyes. The designers didn't go out of their way in this series anyway to paint out a big picture for themselves. Just give this character a scar, and that's that. And he's voiced then by Kevin Conroy. I'll talk about the voice acting later on, but Kevin Conroy was super disappointing in this series. Merman says he'll help them out to get them to Subeternia to the gate, so that they basically spared his life, which is fantastic. And they get in then. So they go down to the land of the dead in episode 4, and they encounter Scareglow. So Scareglow is a character that's basically hanging around in the underworld. There's been different types of stories that have travelled throughout the years within He-Man. Was he a future version of Skeletor, a past version of Skeletor? Is he someone that possesses Skeletor? It's always up in the air. Now, in different stories, they've given him his own characteristic, and that he was a mercenary long and long ago, and that he was able to be brought in under Skeletor's gang because of the magic that Skeletor could use. So this series, this episode here now, it's more or less like a heightened version of something that Scarecrow from the Batman series does. So again, Kevin Smith really thinks outside the box on this one, and each character has to face their own fears. Evelyn, an evil character, has to basically give Orko a pep talk because he's that much of a cook. And that's where we're at with these male heroes. The male characters in this series are either idiots, betas, or just all round bad guys and just totally inept. Nothing new, as we can see with these types of series. The episode ends with them getting out of the underworld, and at that moment Orko sacrifices himself. So fantastic, he's gone and defeats Scareglow in a manner, and they get then to heaven. It's really, really poorly done. I mean, why didn't they just get out immediately? They hang around a little bit until Scareglow comes out, and at that point they then decide, right, it's time to go. Very, 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 very strange within this series. I don't know what they were going for. They were just looking to kill off characters, it seems, with no real reason. It would have been a better idea had they tried to get out immediately and Scareglow whipped Orko back or something, or impaled him or something like that, and I think that would have definitely been a better idea. We've got the 5th episode then, and they show us the Hall of Heroes in Preternia. So Preternia is basically the heaven of the He-Man universe, and He-Man is there with other He-Men of the past. And of course then we have King Grayskull, who Castle Grayskull is based off of. Originally a white character, now changed to be a black man. Of course, as they said beforehand, this series we had to give some sort of importance. They couldn't have all been white dudes. My opinion was, why not create an all new sort of He-Man that might have been someone that might have existed at a point in time. King Grayskull is supposed to be an ancestor of He-Man, of Prince Adam. It looks really strange now that they just basically descended, then his descendants became He-Man, a white guy. Very, very odd. Instead of just saying, look, it could have been some sort of other protector that we had here. I mean, you've Voikor, you've got Hero and other characters that are there, and they just decided not to go with that. Very odd. So what happens is then we get King Grayskull, of course, seems like he's a noble, wise character. The others seem like lugheads, which is no surprise. Roboto then says that he can reforge the sword. We all know where this is going to go. The power is going to go into him, and he's going to be absolutely eviscerated from that. He is. So it's no surprise. Another male character gone. So that's 2 male characters gone. Well, 3 if you count Mossman. Mossman turns up as well here in the afterlife and gives He-Man a bit of a rousing speech. Interestingly enough, a lot of idiots that you'll comment with on Twitter, for example, when they decide to say that Alan Oppenheimer, who's the original voice of Skeletor, by the way, has been a part of this show, and these idiots are going, yeah, he's too old, he couldn't have done the part. Well, for as little as Skeletor is in the show, I think Alan probably could have done it, because Mossman has about the same type of lines, I would say, or if not the same type of a impact upon the show that Skeletor has. But the 3 female characters here, there's never any danger for them. You never feel like they're going to die. Nothing at all. So that's where I have a problem with these type of series, is you can also see the danger that's coming from the male characters. These characters are absolutely immune to any sort of danger or death. Same with the sorceress as well. She is never in trouble within this series, I don't think. So they get out of the heaven part of Eternia. They immediately get back. The Sword of Power is reforged, brought it back, and immediately Skeletor comes out down of the orb. He's been hiding within the orb for the entirety of the series so far. Jumps out, stabs Prince Adam in the back before he can become He-Man, takes the Power Sword, becomes Skelegod, something that we've seen in toy form up until now, and been curious because he has a big H symbol on his chest, and he also was holding the Power Sword, so everyone knew what was going to happen with the toy before we even seen it. That's what happens in those 5 episodes. So there's not an awful lot that happens in them. There's stuff that happens, and it happens really too quickly. To be honest with you, if I was being honest, I think the first half of the season probably should have featured the Underworld team, them going down to the Underworld and finding that sword, and then the second half of the season should have featured getting the Sword of Power in somewhere else, the other half of it. I wouldn't have killed off He-Man and Prince Adam. It might have been a chance for He-Man to possibly, if they were going to write it that way, if they wanted He-Man out and for Prince Adam to become a little bit more knowledgeable about himself and what he could do and be a little bit more braver, I suppose, and give that sort of bravery as well to Cringer, that could have been a viable option, that they could have had him go on that journey to get both swords of power and bring them together and become He-Man once again and be something of a learning curve, I think, for him. That may have been a good idea. That might have been a good story B. Perhaps what else they could have done was Kevin Smith maybe shouldn't have lied about this series and shouldn't have said that it was all about He-Man and that was He-Man's story and that He-Man wasn't going to step aside. It happens when in the 4th episode and becomes Teela's show. Had they been upfront before this even started and said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to do an Avengers style universe, an MCU style universe, where we're going to have different series that are going to be headed by different characters and they're all going to lead into a Masters of the Universe show, I think that would have been a much better idea. So this show should have started off and it should have been like, okay, this is Teela's show out right now, and I think most people would have said, okay, fair enough, we'll go with that. Or if it's a Prince Adam show, we're going with a He-Man show, Prince Adam show, and it's about them, not about baiting and switching, which is exactly what happened within this show. We see from all the material, all the merchandise that's out there, He-Man's face is plastered all over it. So I don't want to hear people saying, well, you know, it's not a bait and switch. It is, because the show is about He-Man. It's He-Man's show. It's what it's known for. And also Skeletor, I would say, as well. And the fact that they're not in it much isn't great whatsoever. So that's the story beats that happen within this series. Very lacking in thinking. Goes to show that Kevin Smith is involved in this. Both him and Mark Bernard, and another bum, a guy that's been involved in Star Trek Picard, a guy that can't write. He's a fella that'll stand on the likes of Kevin Smith's podcast and say he would have done this and that better. Tell people that they didn't like BVS and various other works that are of actual quality with real writers with real pedigree behind them. And these 2 absolute bums and frauds that claim to be fans come out and decide to write this absolute drivel and decide to insult fans for the best part of a year. It's disgraceful. Going on the series itself before I get into talking about Kevin Smith, this is really poorly done. I think when you've had such an ability in the cast, I mean, they have Kevin Conroy as Merman, who was appalling, very appalling. I mean, this is the guy that's voiced Batman for a large number of years, has been an incredible Batman, shows absolute range as the character between Bruce Wayne and Batman, can do it. turns up as Merman in this, completely forgettable, doesn't even really change his voice, poor direction in my opinion. Mark Hamill, another guy that's been living off the Joker voice for a number of years now. It's time to retire it. It needs to stop, because it's just the same voice that he's used here. It's the same voice he used as Chucky. It's the same voice he used in The Dark Crystal as the scientist. It's never ending with Hamill. It's the same voice again and again. It's the same one with Darth Bane that he did also. Needs to be put to rest. I would have liked Alan Oppenheimer as Skeletor, or even I probably would have even gone further and said maybe even Frank Welker, or perhaps even Troy Baker as Skeletor. Two guys with real talent. I would have made a real statement getting those guys in there to do those parts. What we have then in front of us is this. So I'll go here. We've Griffin Newman as Orko. He was okay. He does alright. It's a likeable enough character, and he serves his purpose. Tiffany Smith as Andra, woefully inserted character. They basically told us this was an SJW bingo agenda that they decided to shove a character in here. They could have named her anything else other than Andra. I think most people probably would have been fine with that. The fact that they loudly and proudly said they race changed this character in King Grayskull was a massive no-no. That shouldn't have happened. They should have just introduced this character, all new name, new character. It would have had the same result and the same reception. This character's action figure is going to peg warm. I'm telling you that now. You've got Sarah Michelle Gellar over here as He-Mam, as she's been called online. SJW haircut, butch, doesn't look good whatsoever. Sounds her age. Sarah Michelle Gellar sounds old in this role, and that's not something you want with a character that is supposedly youthful. You've got Justin Long over here as Roboto, does okay, not too bad, forgettable enough. You've got Liam Cunningham as Man-at-Arms Duncan, does a good job, uses some sort of British voice, which is really strange given the fact that he's an Irish actor from Dublin, if I remember correctly. And why didn't he just use his natural accent is something I would ask. Strange. Lena Headey is probably the best performer within the series, even though, as I said earlier on, she does a weak sort of voice as an older character. It doesn't really disguise her voice at all, but she does a serviceable job as Evelyn, and I mean that goes to show you where it's at when she actually looks the best of them, or sounds the best of them, we should say, out of the characters. Chris Wood, who does Prince Adam and He-Man, does a serviceable job. I think he does a good job. I think his transformation scene within the first couple of minutes when he turns into He-Man, it's pretty decent, it's pretty good, and it's something that you're like, yeah, right, He-Man's ready to go. Jason Mewes as Stinkor, completely forgettable, very little to be done. And other than that, I think Alan Oppenheimer does a really nice job as Mossman. I really wanted to say that because I think Alan Oppenheimer was really underplayed, and I think he was underused. I also think that he should have gotten either the Skeletor role or perhaps even a larger role within this series, because I think that's a man of real quality and real integrity that should be a bigger part of this series than what he is, than a brief cameo that we see within this series. Other than that, I think the voice acting is okay. The Triclops voice was decent enough. Kevin Michael Richardson does what he does as Beastman. He sounds the same in every single role he does, so that's no shock there to be done again. So I think when they're given a star-studded cast the way they were, I was expecting a lot more. It does seem, just like Kevin Smith, an awful lot of people found in their performances that sounded like that they just wanted a paycheck and that they just couldn't wait to get out. There was not an awful lot of enthusiasm or heart or feeling behind a lot of the voice acting within the series. So that's a real pity. Going on and talking about Kevin Smith himself now, which has become a real bone of contention within the fan community. Kevin Smith, for the best part of a year, has been telling lies to fans. He's been telling people that this was going to be He-Man's show. It's all about He-Man. That was a lie. It's all about Teela within the show and her rise in power. I wouldn't be surprised now if they decided to rewrite and reanimate and redub part 2 of the series, or do some sort of radical change to the next half. They haven't announced when the next half is, which I think that they probably understood the backlash was coming for this. I don't care what Kevin Smith says, and what he's saying is at the moment that Mattel and Netflix are happy with what he's doing. They're happy with the bad reviews, apparently, according to him, which is unbelievable. I do understand no PR is bad PR for these companies, and they think that, you know, if someone's not interested in your stuff and they're vocal about it and saying it's bad, that, hey, that's good for us because someone's talking about it. It's not, though, because what's going to happen is your merchandise is going to clog shelves, which these people aren't going to be happy about. People aren't going to come back for the second half of the series, which they won't be happy about. We know that they've cancelled Netflix Daredevil at season 3 when it was popular, when people liked that series. Netflix cancelled that. So do you think they're going to be hanging around and doing this if people don't like this? I think not. Kevin Smith's issue is he got paid. He doesn't really care. It doesn't seem, which is fair enough for him. I mean, that's his prerogative, is just to get paid. But I think most people now, like myself, before this, are now wary. I was wary of him coming into this. When you see the behaviour that he's been displaying with the likes of the shilling for the MCU, the shilling for the likes of Disney Star Wars, the filming of himself crying to these shows, bizarre stuff, the way he's gone on about the CW Flash and Supergirl, two shows that have been absolutely dreadful, and the likes of the Legends of Tomorrow, the way he's behaved surrounding them, very strange. And yet then it's the same man that'll criticise Ben Affleck as Batman and Batman versus Superman. Very odd stuff that he's doing. But he's a guy that has been outed, I think, and has outed himself, and he can only blame himself. He's a guy that's been saying for years that he's one of us, he's one of the fans, he's championing things for us because this is what the average fan would want to see. He's spat into the faces of fans now for over a year, and he's continuing to do so now. Now he's starting to go into denial, and he's starting to damage limitations that are going around this series. Anyone with a half a brain would have told you this when doing this series. You do a series about He-Man and Skeletor. If you want to have other characters involved, fantastic. That's what you should do. These episodes are 25 minutes long, in and around that. And yet this series with 5 episodes feels like less character that you see with these characters than in the Mike Young Productions 2000X series. The Mike Young Production 2000X series is a better He-Man and Masters of the Universe story than this is. That shouldn't be happening. What you should be able to do with the money that you have behind you on Netflix, with the talents that you have at your disposal on Netflix, that should be absolutely blowing anything that came out beforehand out of the water. Yeah, you have a series that was released not too long ago that's a far better rendition of He-Man and Master of the Universe than this one is. That's a sad indictment within itself. So if I was Kevin Smith, I'd be looking at it, I'd be taking on the constructive feedback, I'd be taking on the criticism that's going on now, and I would produce a good product for the second half of the season and perhaps maybe atone for what you've done now in the past. I think a lot of people like myself are maybe thinking that this series is going to end up with He-Man here, that she's going to become some ability to hold the power sword and become some sort of other character. He-Man, some people are calling her, I'd call her Karen. That would be what I would do for this character. But I think this is going to be a very big learning curve for Kevin Smith. I think he's finished in the geek circuit now. I'd say for a lot of people, there are people out there that will be fans of his that will say, I don't think he's finished. I think he is. I think if he decides to pop up at a convention again, I don't think he's ever going to live this down. He's charging people $50 in to ask him questions in some sort of YouTube setting that he's decided to shut the comments down and live chat down because he knew what was coming. Nobody that's brave enough that knows that their product is good is ever going to do that, but he's decided to do it. And what you have now is a show that's absolutely deceived fans into thinking it was going to be decent. It wasn't. It's disappointed fans, which is something that you never want to do, nor should you do. And it's as a result now of a company that are massive, that are looking at 500,000 subscribers just walked away recently, that are going to continue to do the same. The Transformers series was terrible on Netflix. This was terrible on Netflix. There's a large amount of other things that are on Netflix that are terrible. I've talked about them in the past, particularly one movie that they were deciding to promote not too long ago. Shocking stuff. And this is where it's going for this company. This company's going woke and it's going to go broke. That's how these things work. What I'm excited to see from here is this. I'm excited to see the Teela merchandise on shelves. I'm excited to see the Teela merchandise on clearance because this is where this is going to go. And that's going to be the real acid test for this series. I've also heard through various different people that work in stores that this products for this series have been underproduced. That says to me that Mattel probably didn't have a lot of confidence in the show and probably knew about what was going to happen before it happened, because these companies, even though they like to play dumb, know exactly what's going to happen as a result of this. They've seen it happen with Ghostbusters, they've seen it happen with Star Wars, they've seen it happen with Star Trek, Doctor Who, Transformers is next, Lord of the Rings is next, they're going to get it next. And these people decide to keep trying the insane and keep failing again and again when it's not working. And fans like me are telling you, don't do it. Because if you want a good product and if you want a successful product, which is all that we want, you just have to listen to the fans, get constructive criticism, do something that makes sense. don't bait and switch like you've been doing over the last couple of years. It becomes really easy to see, and people understand, and people feel disrespected and disappointed when you do it. For people that are out there that don't know or are in the know about this, and that's where you have a lot of reviews that are 1-star reviews on this series, so it doesn't shock me. That's my review on this series. It's a large disappointment. The first episode comes out of the gates pretty well, and then after that then it just falls off of a cliff, and the series itself doesn't rebound from that. There's a lot of wokeisms, SJW nonsense that's going on in this. There's a lot of undertones, undercurrents, some stuff that's out in your face. You've got Andrew here at one point says to Skeletor that he's a bad guy and all of this, and Skeletor basically says because of the way he looks he can't get a woman. I'm not joking, that's in the series. And that's where you're at then. You have He-Man then. Prince Adam gets blamed by Teela, and her feelings are hurt. He passes on. He's in the next life, and she's complaining to him, saying that she had to live with the fact that he lied to her. Insane levels of stuff that's going on within this series. But anyway, SJWs do as SJWs do. Pure and utter nonsense. They should be never let along with these franchises ever. They should never be let into these franchises or these IPs. They should never have the reins of these things, because all they know how to do with these franchises is annoy fans, drive them away, and end up crashing them and saying, well, fans are the problem. I don't think so. It's you lot. Anyway, I'm going to leave the video there. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell up above for future uploads. Check out the links posted in the description down below to support the channel. And make sure you're following me over on Odyssey. It's available on web browser, iOS, and it's soon to be available on Android. Talk to you later. Good luck.